Well, let's dive in today to our first topic, which you really kind of beautifully, succinctly captured with just this title of the productivity myth. So, full disclosure for our boss heroes listening, when Alyssa and I sort of curate the content for the show, she sends me ideas, I got my ideas, and then we kind of sort through them and plug them into these segments. And recently, Alyssa, you emailed and said, I would love to talk about how to dismantle and bravely call out the myths we've built, a lot of leaders have built around being busy and getting things done. And I thought, man, what a great idea. So where would you like to start?
Well, I think that there's like this thing that spurred in me recently about, a lot of times when I coach, and I know that you've had similar interactions, Joe, where people are expressing just the volume of, for instance, email that they are responsible for the amount of hours, quantity of
Yeah.
hours that the job demands. And over the course of the pandemic and working from home and all of these other remote type of circumstances we found ourselves in, the opportunity and the ability that we gave work to blend into our home life,
Mm.
our home time, its presence, ever presence on our digital devices, being continually available
Mm-hmm.
mentally and physically for work. It has just, I think, reached a tipping point of being consuming
Mm.
of us. And so we become then this product of what we do, right? That our orientation to the world, to ourselves becomes, what have I done? What did I do? What am I going to do?
Mm.
And for me personally, that is a dangerous, dangerous place to be in. It is a dangerous space for my mental health. It is a dangerous space for my body physically because it elicits mega stress,
Mm.
which is absolutely horrible continually, chronically for your body. And the ability that we give the capacity of what we have available to being productive is always in the terms of volume and quantity. And
Mm.
that's where I think we have to start dismantling that myth, because productivity is not about volume and quantity.
Mm.
That is where I think we have this age old thing of, maybe it's based upon like the manufacturing age, industrial revolution, where we were the number of widgets we made,
Mm-hmm.
or, that kind of thing. But now it doesn't have the same flow through to email. It's not, I can bang out 100 emails and look how productive I am, or look how many hours I worked in the last, week. I got 80 hours in. Woohoo me. You know, and that's like a trophy or a badge that we tout
Yes.
around, right? That's got to stop. We as leaders have to start dismantling the heck out of the culture that we created that says you got to be a hero and work 90 hours a
Mm-hmm.
week, and you got to have FaceTime with each and every person, and you got to respond at 2 a.m. to an email. Wrong. This is going to kill our productivity. It will kill our spirits. And I feel that it is the crux of what kills our ability to truly be passionate and love the work that we do.
Beautifully stated. And if I can add, and it's killing our health.
Yes, yes.
It's killing our health. We're not exercising. We're not getting as much time in rest and recovery. It's killing our health. I want to tell you that I just feel so seen right now, my friend, because everything you just described, it's like you laid back in an easy chair right inside my head, because I am so very guilty of so much of this. And what's crazy about it is I'm also fully conscious of it. Even though I know that it's a vicious cycle and that it does harm, I still get consumed by it. I have days where I go into the day saying, I'm going to accomplish these 8 things, and it's already unrealistic. The expectation that I'm going to get all 8 things of those done in that day is absurd. But I go into the day believing that I can. And I can come out of that day having gotten 5 of those things done. And then maybe on the fly, a client called me up and we ended up having a really fantastic 45-minute conversation on the phone. And I really helped them. Like we had a really rich conversation, and they leave feeling like, man, that was great. I got a lot of help. And then I go home, and the first thing I say when my wife or kids ask me, how was your day? I'll probably say something like, well, I wasn't as productive as I wish I had been. And and I would probably eventually get to, but I got to have this really great conversation, and that's great. But now I got to climb out of the hole, right? Because I still have 8 other things that I was hoping to knock out tomorrow. But when I wake up in the morning, now it feels like 11, and you get stuck in these cycles. And so we end up, I think a lot of leaders do this. They evaluate the failure or success of a day based on to-do list and productivity crossing off, instead of the quality of the interactions that they're having, or what they learned, or the difference they made in the lives of others. But then, and here's where it gets really kind of sick, is we then ding our own competence. Right? We say, I wasn't able to be as productive. Yes, I did all this quality work, and I helped all these people, but I'm not keeping up. Yep. And so this starts to make me feel incompetent or less competent. And I think it all comes back to one of the first things that you said, which is, in so many places, we have completely unreasonable expectations about what one person can accomplish in a job in a day.
Yeah.
How do we fix that?
Well, first I have a few things, a few tactics and strategies, but I also want to point out and highlight what you just said about the fact that we're not giving ourselves credit for the depth, the quality of our interactions. For me, it's the value that you were able to bring to the table to that person, how much you served that day. When we are able to make the intangible tangible and quantify that for ourselves in one way or another, I think that that's strategy number 1, is figuring out a way to give yourself credit, whether it's a freaking Post-it note where you wrote down A+ for every time you had more than a hello with one of your direct reports, a conversation of value, something that meant something to someone.
Well, this is the very definition of a gratitude journal. It's why that for now, in recent years, so many people are being encouraged to do it, because it is the kind of cure for this cyclical productivity, kind of shallow, simple task to-do list stuff that we get consumed by. And maybe you write down something that you're grateful for that happened today, or that you did today, or you just point to something that had meaning beyond the to-do list. But you're absolutely right.
This reminds me of, a couple of months back, Joe, we did that virtual summit that had to do with boss beliefs, right? And having folks name their boss beliefs. And that was a really powerful exercise. And it was difficult at first to get people to name those, but they know whenever they do it.
Right.
They had this feeling, right? That it gave them a feeling. So that's what you want to aim for, is you have the feeling of what it is that you did that was like, oh yeah, that felt
Mm-hmm.
good. Name that feeling, because
Mm-hmm.
that's part of your value system. That's what's operating for you at a level of authenticity in the workplace that brings meaning and value to you being there. So write that down. Make
It, and
that tangible for yourself.
And it's this, we have to do for ourselves the things that we know we need to do for our personnel. We need to constantly ask our personnel, what energizes you about your work? Tell me a story about something that you did recently that made you really proud of your capabilities, or to work here, or how you made a difference in the lives of others. We have to draw that out of ourselves as well, with the same kinds of thoughtful, intentional questions.
Yeah. Second strategy that I have for trying to dismantle these
You
myths
numbered
of
them.
productivity.
That's like you showed up with like a bullet list. I'm just like,
Well, I
virtual
didn't
high
really. I
five, my
just
friend.
literally like it's something that's top of mind, because I also
Yeah.
have to tell you that this is something that's, you know, important for me, in that as a solopreneur, you know, I determine my own
Mm-hmm.
productivity, right? Which
Yeah.
is, as you know, that can be a real beast, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this is top of mind. It's something that I'm focusing on. And was just listening to this podcast, Mindful Productivity Podcast is the name, that wonderfully speaks about this kind of thing, unconventional ways to kind of approach this topic of productivity. In any case, my second strategy for myself is single tasking.
Yes.
I, and it seems simple, but we don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
We are constantly, writing back that email while listening to this over here, while trying to do three other things. And we're
Mm-hmm.
writing our to-do lists about the things that we're still got to do when we're doing that, and checking this off and trying to do that over here. Slow down, single task.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the biggest gifts that I've been able to give myself, is to just have this thought pattern of, this is enough. This is what my brain needs to do, and concentrate on it. And I don't need to try to do all of these other things while doing this. I know that I can. I don't need to prove it continually by multitasking, by demanding that of myself, right? The other thing, and I think this is my point with the podcast, the Mindful Productivity podcast that Sarah puts out, is that you get to pay attention to your own energy levels. You know what brings you energy, what completely drains you about your work. What is it about if you start your day every day by going into the vortex of email and swimming through that, and thinking that you can only be productive once you have your entire inbox done, or you have at least 50 things checked, and they're no longer bold on the inbox. Is that bringing you energy, or is it sucking you dry first thing? Design strategies that bring you energy, and when you need to take care of tasks that will deplete that energy. Nobody's sitting over your shoulder as a leader in this stage of the game. No one should be sitting over your shoulder saying, no, you must do this now. You must do this now, right? Pay attention to your energy levels and what brings you the energy and what sucks it dry from you. And then listen. Listen to yourself and design your workflows around it.
And experiment, right? You're going to have trial and error for this. The idea of single tasking, the opposite of which is multitasking, right? And the definition of which is doing several things at once badly. And I think what ends up happening to people a lot is unintentional multitasking, and maybe it's a byproduct of technology or just being pulled in multiple directions. But if you're sitting in your office and your email platform is just open all day and you get the ding, and then you move from the document over to the email, and then you reply, and then when you're replying another email comes in, and then somebody pops into your office and says, hey, can we, and now we're doing the thing that we know we shouldn't be doing. And so the only way around unintentional multitasking is intentional single tasking. And we only intentionally single task when we create the kinds of boundaries and awareness that you're talking about. I know I notice my energy levels in certain parts of the day, my sharpness for more creative stuff. If I have to write a portion of a new keynote or a webinar or start planning content for the podcast, I'm done in the afternoon. That is not, I'm tapped out up here. And so I am specific and intentional about putting time in my calendar to do that in the mornings because I'm sharper for it. But I also need to close the email client. And I need to close my door, and I need to put my phone on do not disturb, and I need to put my headphones in and put my white noise app on so that I can escape into just doing this single thing well. Because if I don't do it well right now for an hour, it's going to take me 3 later when I've had all the dings and the bells and the interruptions.
Yeah. And you've traded now. You've made unconsciously or consciously, depending upon where you're at, right? That trade-off, that exchange of this is the value of my time and how I value my time.
And that goes the other way too, because here's something else I've started doing that has really made a difference for me. I have told myself, you get this amount of time to finish that. I need to go and write the next BossBetter email newsletter. And I know that I want to write about these 3 things and then pull in this other tool and resource. And I will kind of take however long it takes, but then I'm in there and I'm like, well, I want to create an interesting graphic for this. And then, I want to get this person's permission to share their thing and next thing 3 hours has gone. And I've started getting more intentional about saying, this will be done in an hour. There's that whole theory, the name of it just escaped me, but that we fill the time allotted to us. We fill the space allotted to us. If I go into it knowing that it has to be done in an hour, then I don't get caught up by all of the things that pop up that make me say, I could do that too, and I could add this, and I could, no, stay focused. What's the end game here? The end game here is that it's done by 2. And my team knows that I am famous around here for saying perfection is the enemy of done, which is a huge lesson that I learned when I wrote my first book. And my editor told me this over and over again. Joe, the sooner you learn that perfection is the enemy of done, you're going to have a book. Until you learn it, you're not, because you will rewrite forever. And she was absolutely right. And I have such commitments to thresholds of quality that I will constantly tweak and improve and tweak and improve and tweak and improve. And it's like, listen, where you got it in an hour is pretty great. And that doesn't mean you're settling for good enough. It means you're settling for done, which is needed.
Right. Those are some great strategies. I really, really appreciate those. The one other element that I think is important to bring in is that when it comes to dismantling this cultural myth of productivity, we have to do our part to role model it and make it visible, because it hasn't become a culture of productivity by accident. People continually witness you as a leader at their desk from 7A to 7P.
Yep.
And then they think, well, that must mean that's what I have to do, right? You have to lead by example. And we have to stop rewarding behavior that is not truly productive. It is not about the amount of face time that you get in this organization. It is not about the amount of emails or the time that you send it out. You're not going to get props for sending a response back at midnight.
First, right.
Yes. And that is no longer acceptable
Mm-hmm.
behavior. And we're going to have a conversation with you about balance and true productivity if that's the kind of thing that continues. But you have to start leading by example and making it known, communicating clearly. This amount of volume and quantity does not equal productivity here.
Right, right. And we're seeing organizations, I think, who have come a long way in terms of recognizing that the kind of piling on of work and duties and the, take as many hours as it takes to get it all done is doing harm. We're
Mm-hmm.
seeing organizations now who are saying, if you add a new meeting, you must take one away. If you add a new responsibility, what are you taking away? Because they recognize that the space is only so big. And when you invade the space beyond its reasonable, healthy borders, you only create burnout. You only create exhaustion. You only wear down your talent in such a way that could potentially drive them away. And when you look at organizations who've really started to understand this and prioritize it, their folks are actually working a little bit less, and it results in them being more productive and having more engagement and having higher quality of experiences in the workplace and retaining more talent. And so I love that you brought this up both at the individual level, but also we can talk about it at the organizational level now in terms of what are the organization's values, how are they prioritizing people's for lack of a better term, work-life balance, which is kind of a
Mm-hmm.
mythical term. It's more like work-life management nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
But those conversations are real and they are happening, but they begin with us.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for sharing all those gems and strategies. And I hope you folks out there got a lot from this conversation and you can start dismantling
Yes,
starting right after you've listened to the rest of this podcast.
absolutely. And making time in your schedule to listen to our podcast because we think it
That's
helps.
right.